Remember your first credit card? It gets you no rewards, it has no real benefits, and it's been lost in a sock drawer for the past half decade. You haven't used that card lately, and you probably never plan to. Should you close that card? I think we can all relate to situations like this. And when you're seeking to streamline your finances, I think the temptation is there to close credit cards that you aren't using. While it initially might sound like a helpful move, you might want to rethink that strategy. How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we jump in, it would mean a lot to me if you can hit the like button down below, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the YouTube algorithm. Before you close a credit card, you do need to consider a few things, like whether it has an annual fee or whether it's a secured card. You also have to consider how old the account is or how much your spending limit is. In general, I don't recommend you close your credit cards if at all possible. And if you could make a product change to something without an annual fee, that would be the best option for you. So if you have an annual fee, you should try to product change to something without an annual fee. If you have a card that's a secured card and the bank is holding your deposit, if you product change to something without an annual fee and that's unsecured, you will get your deposit back. However, if that option isn't available to you, the fact of the matter is that this card is costing you a certain amount of money every year, or the bank is holding a certain amount of money that's inaccessible to you. And since you don't use this card, you aren't really getting any benefit out of this card. So let's say you had a $95 a year airline card that's sitting in a sock drawer and you don't even fly that airline. Well, you're not getting any benefits off of having that card, and so it would probably be best that you close that card. Again, secured cards are a very similar story. In this case, the bank is holding money away from you, money that you could allocate somewhere else in your financial structure, like you could invest that money, you could use it on other expenses. Hell, you could even just take that money and use it as a vacation and say, yay, I've graduated from using secured cards. You should do something to get that money back from the bank, whatever you plan to use that money for. And so if you can't product change or upgrade that card out of the secured category, it's probably best you close it. The reason why I recommend product changing before closing, it's because closing a credit card will impact your credit in a negative way. One of the factors in your credit score is the age of accounts. And the reason why we need to consider the age of accounts is because the account age accounts for about 15% of your credit score. A longer credit history signals to creditors that you're more responsible with your credit and you've been able to keep your accounts open for a longer period of time. And closing a credit card could decrease that age of accounts, particularly if this card has been open longer than your other accounts. However, this sort of effect is minimized if you are closing a newer account. So if you've only had this card open for a year, let's say you open an airline card so you can take advantage of like free bags or something like that, and you don't ever plan to fly that airline after that, maybe you could just cancel that card. It won't impact the age of your accounts all too badly by closing that account. Let's go back to the secured card example. So a lot of people's first cards are their secured cards. Now this account has been open for quite some time. What will happen when you close this account, if you have to close this account? And what will happen is that because you're closing, let's say, your oldest account, if your other accounts aren't there to sort of pick up the average, that average age of account is going to drop significantly. And so that will lower your credit. But the good news is that this particular category is not as important as the other elements on your card. So more important elements are things like your utilization rate and your payment history. Like those are way more important than the age of account. But speaking of your utilization rate, you do have to consider what your spending limit is on this card, because a large aspect of your credit score, 30% of it to be exact, is your utilization rate. And your utilization rate is how much credit you're using over how much credit you have been offered overall. When you close an account, you are losing that line of credit, so your total credit line actually decreases. In general, for those of us who pay off our credit cards every month, this isn't too much of a problem. You can always pay off your credit cards early if you know you want to take out a loan soon, so you can make sure your utilization rate is all the way down to zero before you get your credit check to take out a loan. That will always work, provided the bank actually reports that you've paid down your card all the way to zero. So that's something to consider. Now, the question remains, should you ever close a credit card account? And that depends. I think a great case can be made for brand new accounts since closing them won't affect you much. Another great case can be made for cards with annual fees and secured cards with no product change pathway. For cards with no annual fee, it actually costs you nothing to keep, and so you should keep those open as long as you possibly can. But what about old accounts with annual fees? Well, that's honestly a tough bind to be in. It could be that you can close that account and you can still have that long credit history due to other accounts and other cards. You could also see if there's a retention offer for your cards. So sometimes the bank will waive your annual fee, especially if you say, well, I don't use my card enough, so is there any way you could waive the annual fee or even give me a retention bonus? So like if you spend, X amount on the card, they will give you X amount of points. And so those things could help you offset that annual fee so you don't have to pay it, but also keep your card open. And again, good news is that even if you have to, closing the account won't damage your credit long term. There's always time to build up the age of accounts again, and you can always sign up for more credit cards to lower your utilization rates. But those are my thoughts on the issue. I really just talked about it a lot because, this is something that my parents asked me about, and this is sort of the thought process I gave them. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you like videos like this, be sure to check out my channel using the link in the description down below. I have other videos on there about credit and other kinds of credit cards. Until next time, let's go out there and get some free stuff.